Bakidearest. For this video, I thought since it's been a full year that I have lived in Japan, and yeah, a full year, it honestly feels a lot quicker than that. I think that there's always like a big difference when you live in another country versus visiting it all the time. And not only is this the first time that I've ever lived in another country, but also the first time I've ever moved out. I'm going to be answering some of your guys' questions regarding what it has been like and kind of sharing my experiences and some do's, don'ts, and things I would change and all that jazz. So I'm just gonna get right into it. Let's go. Do you have any regrets on moving to a new country? Not really. It's honestly been one of the coolest chapters of my entire life. I was already really super open and compassionate about this culture that I really wanted to try so many new things. Is there anything you wish you knew before moving to Japan? I wish that I had printed business cards and known how important they were in this country. Because every business meeting that I've ever been to, or any company that I've ever had to like sit with, they always have to introduce each other with the business cards. Unless someone willingly asks for it, you know, like at a convention when you like an artist's work and you want to know what their Instagram and Twitter is, you'll probably ask for their business cards. It builds up. I've got like a whole stack that's like this big of business cards. Haven't called a single person from any of them. And I don't have any, so I should probably make some just for that kind of thing. Do you get homesick often? Not really, because for me, I mean this in the sense that like I can always talk to them. I'm only a click away from calling them. Same thing with friends. I can just, you know, message them either on Facebook. I mean, communication is still there as long as you give time for it. I think the only thing that really rips friendships and communications apart is like, you know, both parties that don't even try. And I'm already old enough that I think that I should have already been kind of like experiencing all of this. And I think I visited in and out of Japan enough to kind of make the decision to move here. So it wasn't really something that was like blatantly too fast or out of the blue. So what Japanese culture shock have you still not gotten over? I guess maybe it's a lot harder for me to not get into like the stranger friendliness that we have back in America. Let's say I was talking about the Joker movie to a friend, and let's say if some guy overheard that and said, "Oh dude, you guys saw that too?" You see what I mean? There's like a very comfortable feeling with another person, even if you don't know them. If they come into your conversation, it's not weird. It doesn't really exist, at least not in Tokyo. But other than that, I think like I've been pretty okay with the introverted culture of everything, and I like to keep up. Hey guys, so as I was editing this video, I realized that I forgot a vital piece of culture shock that I think everyone and their mother has heard on the internet by this point, and one of those is definitely the high suicide rate in Japan. It's one thing that I always kind of heard it on the internet and other people talking about it, and then it was another thing when I first visited and I first heard the conductor saying that I had to change lines because somebody jumped. I was in shock, I was scared, I was wondering why the people around me weren't even reacting to it and just calmly changed trains as they were told. And then I look back at this video and see that that's not even the first thing I talk about. And I think it comes from almost near to my daily life or weekly life, that my train gets delayed because somebody jumps onto the tracks. And I don't want to say that I'm desensitized to it. It's more like, even though I really hate this problem about Japan, even though I think that it's not even being improved by a whole lot, it's something that I almost don't even think about anymore because nobody is really doing anything about it, and it's happening so frequently and so big of a problem that you wonder, what can you even do to help solve it? So I think it's really important that I at least address this issue, and hopefully it'll even help me to remember of what the big problem is. So if there's anything I have to tell you guys, that if you do visit Japan and your train does get delayed and you find out that it's because somebody jumped onto the tracks and you realize that people aren't reacting, don't try to scrutinize the people desensitized too much, because they probably come from a place that deals with this stuff so often that they are so numb to it then they don't even realize it. So overall, I do think Japan really needs to improve their support on mental health and teaching people that it's okay to talk about your problems. But right now I've gotten a lot of, you know, people that have said that they just think that it's too personal, or that people won't care, or they feel like they're burdening everybody with their problems, and so they only think that they have one way out. And so yeah, that's kind of the dark part that I wanted to mention about Japan that I'm probably not ever going to be 100% used to. Have you tried Japanese boba? Okay, this is gonna blow your minds, guys. Boba just came to Japan, like this year, or technically 2019. What? I know. In fact, they don't call it boba, they call it tapioca. And so now it's a huge thing here. I can never go to a boba place without having to wait for like 25 minutes. Oh, but to answer the question straight up, yes, I have tried Japanese boba, and the main boba that I will always get is taro. And I don't get the boba pearls. I actually replace it either with egg pudding or coconut jelly, and it is delicious. Was it difficult to get accustomed to living in a country where it's mainly cash-based? Actually, in Tokyo, there's a lot of places that take card. In short, I think you should always bring cash on you because there's still gonna be those places, especially smaller places, that only take cash. It's also hard to split the bill. Sometimes, especially in America, I would do things where it's like, oh, can we pay half of this in cash and then the rest on my card? In Japan, they don't really do that. So if you do card and it's like multiples of you guys, someone has to pay it all and you pay that person in cash. But I will have to say buy a coin purse because coins here are like brutally important. Was it hard to learn how to ride the train stations alone? Do you get lost sometimes? At first, yes, because public transportation isn't exactly something that I'm really familiar with at all. I've always had Google Maps on me, so I never really got lost, but I have gotten on the wrong train. Highly recommend that you get either a SIM card or some pocket Wi-Fi so you can get the Google Maps app and then just use that to try and figure out which train and which platform to do it on. It took me though like maybe a full year before I could get used to it. Are there any differences in the way you have to act in public and compared to living in the States? So I kind of already answered this before. There is not really much of a stranger friendliness going on, but there's a lot of old people that don't mind talking to you, especially if they see that you're a foreigner. Some of them get really fascinated by it and some of them like will avoid you like the plague. But other than that, yeah, I would say that most people are kept to themselves, and that's why I'm really worried about Tokyo 2020 because there's going to be a lot of foreigners here, and there's going to be a lot of loudness going on, and there's going to be probably a lot of Japanese people that get anxiety from it. How is it getting to see anime before the rest of us? Honestly, not that different considering most of them don't have English subtitles, but if you've ever come here and you want to watch anime and you don't know how to speak the language, you're gonna have a hard time. I pretty much have to keep up with anime almost at the same time as everybody else. Does being fluent in reading the hiragana and katakana characters before going to Japan help you smoothly transition from English speaking to Japanese speaking countries, or are you still relying on Joey to do most of the interpreting, or both? It is a little bit of both, but for the most part I'm okay going out on my own. I can, go to the grocery store, order fine there. I can go to a restaurant and order for, however many people. I can pretty much say anything to get my point across, and for the most part everyone has pretty much understood me. The only things that I really would need Joey on is, going to the tax office, which I can barely understand that in English. Is the water not water, but it is the tears of anime waifus? I do like the tears of Asuna. How convenient do you think convenience stores are in Japan? They are so convenient. Like, they sell like hair dye there. You can pay your bills over there, and I'm serious. It's really hard to cook in Japan because the food at the konbinis is so cheap and the quality is actually pretty good. They sell pornography there for some reason. I don't know why. They sell manga there, which, I'm sure a lot of you on this channel can totally relate to that. They sell anime figures, extra pants in case I guess you... How much stuff did you take from your own house, and how did you get it there if it was more than 2 big suitcases? How did it feel to move there? Were there any complications? Merry Christmas soon, Happy New Year. So as I was getting closer to my visa going all the way through, I was still coming in and out of Japan, and I was slowly like building stuff like in this room. So I got this desk off of Amazon Japan, and then I got like that bookcase over there from Amazon Japan, and then I got like this sofa bed from there as well. As far as like my computer and all that other stuff went, I did just fit it into my suitcase. I brought the monitor, and I have the Mac Mini, which is like this big. So there was like a lot of room in there, and then overall I just kept like progressively sending stuff before the actual move date. Do you get recognized a lot in Japan? No, actually. I don't really have a Japanese audience, and neither does Joey, because YouTube Japan is like its own thing, and in Japan English still isn't really that common at all. So I guess you can blame it on number 1, there is a separate YouTube for Japan, and number 2, even if they went to my channel, I doubt a lot of them would understand what I'm saying. But when I do get recognized in Japan, it's always in the places that kind of make sense. So a place where there's like a lot of foreigners, and especially every time I go to either Ikebukuro and Akihabara, which has like a lot of anime and otaku-esque things that really attract a lot of foreigners. What was the funniest or most shocking thing you've seen or experienced while in Japan? One that you haven't talked about in a previous video, please. So when I was still coming in and out and I was buying furniture for this place, I went over to Nitori, which is basically the IKEA of Japan, and one of the employees was like looking at Joey and I speaking English. I think that they really wanted to speak to us, so they kind of like went off, and I saw them on their phone, which I can only assume was probably like Google Translate or something like that, and they wanted to know how to say like, how can I help you, or how are you doing today? So once they come back after getting off of their phone, they're just like, how are you doing today? Are you okay? Do you need help? And it was so cute. So I was just like, oh, it's okay. Thank you though. We're just looking around. They're like, okay. And then they go off and they're so happy that they spoke some English. It's kind of like the joyous feeling that you get when you know you've said like a Japanese sentence right and the other person understood you. You're like, yay, I'm not totally gaijin. What do you do to learn and practice more Japanese? Have you had any issues living in Japan and not being fluent in the language? I do have a private tutor, which is a really good friend of ours, and he comes to my place around like twice a week. So we spend about maybe 2 hours or so to study on and off. We have like a textbook and everything, and we just speak in Japanese, and he gives me a test every session, and if I get one question wrong or one little thing wrong, he gives me the test to do all over again before we can continue with the lesson. So he's been honestly really good, and I have him to thank for the fact that I've been able to really get my brain working. And I don't know, I think it's also because Joey and I are so comfortable talking in English that we're just not motivated enough to teach me Japanese, so having someone else do it is really good. Have you found any clothing shops for plus size people? It's tough. They do exist. I've seen it before, but it takes some work and a lot of research to try and find one. Luckily though, there's a lot of fashion nowadays in Japan where oversized clothing is like a really big thing. So I mean, honestly, with a lot of streetwear and a lot of like oversized sweaters, they do sell those. So you're gonna have to look it up on that, sorry. Are you afraid of North Korea bombing more so now because you're closer? No, not really. For me, I don't let those things dictate my entire life. I feel like with that type of stuff, if it happens, it happens. And I'm going to live my life to the fullest. If you lose your YouTube career, what would you do for an occupation in Japan? I don't know, really. I would still like to work something in anime or like anime-esque in some way, shape, or form, whether like in the industry in Japan to help with like licensings or publishings or marketings in that sense, or maybe even things to promote the travel in Japan, because I really love traveling around Japan. There's always something new that you can do. I would still love to do that for a living if I couldn't do anything anime. How does it feel to live with Joey? Honestly, it's been really good. I mean, of course, like we bicker, what couple doesn't, but other than that, like he's honestly been very supportive of a lot of the decisions I've made. We've helped each other like almost from the ground up of from where we came from mentally and physically, and he's really been such a trooper to kind of help me understand the culture a lot more, and I've honestly really had such a great time embracing such a big part of his life into mine. And honestly, his family in Japan are like the coolest people ever. I love hanging out with them. They only speak Japanese, but like what we can communicate, and Joey being there, like they're honestly very sweet people. Do people treat you differently once they realize you're from the USA, or just not a native in general, apart from having to navigate the language barriers? I mean, not exactly. They don't really ask me any questions about the USA. I mean, I guess the biggest question I get is, why haven't we integrated the metric system? Did you ever feel like you didn't fit in at Japan at some point? I don't know if I feel left out, like in the negative sense. It's just like, it doesn't make me uncomfortable. I feel different from other people, but it doesn't get to me, if that makes sense. At the end of the day, I feel like the foreigner that's only trying to learn more about the culture. Is it true that manga and anime goods are much cheaper in Japan than they are in the US? If so, it must be a blessing not to have to spend so much anime merch, unlike here in the US. Yes. That is the short answer. Yes, it's definitely cheaper here. Not to mention there's a lot of of rarer and more hard to come by anime merch than you could ever possibly imagine. Manga though is hard to come by if it's English. Have any friendships from the States ended? No. Okay, so I'm confused. Question, is it true that the rent of a place is cheaper if someone has recently passed away while living there? I've heard that. I haven't seen it, but I've heard people that say that this happens. When someone dies in an apartment, the rent place of whatever location that is goes down. If you're gonna ask me, I would choose not to live in a place where somebody died. Sorry, you can't convince me. I'd rather spend the extra time looking for a place that is clean, but I can't confirm if that's like a legit thing. What type of visa did you get and how long did it take you to get it? So I've gotten this question a lot. I probably should have put this at the start, but it was like one of the last questions. So the visa I got is a work visa under a company that has me do like different projects around Japan. So like I film my YouTube videos, but I also help them film YouTube videos. And for the most part, I can pretty much do what I'm already doing. The visa itself took a very long time, what felt like an eternity. I want to say like at least a year. If we really had to push it with like seeing what visa was good, then probably 2 years. I will have to give you guys some advice here. Find a company that is willing to bring you out. So like when a company wants you, that means that you have a skill or a special skill, which is a visa in itself, a special skill that is worth bringing you out from another country than them just hiring someone else that lives in Japan. And the other thing is have a degree in something. That will really kill a lot of time. And there's a lot of people who do teach English. That's always another viable option to do. Did moving to Japan affect your anime taste in any way? No, if anything, it expanded it because sometimes I'll see like a manga and I'm like, oh, what's that about? Well, looks like that's all the questions for this Q&A. Hopefully that kind of gave you guys some insight of what it was like my first year. Overall, I've loved this new chapter of my life. I've loved living with Joey. He's been such a trooper with me this whole time, and I've made like a lot of really great friends, and it's just been such a crazy experience. And I guess that's why it's hard for me to think about the fact that I've been here for a full year, and hopefully 2020 will be just as great, if not better. But I appreciate you guys for watching. Hopefully this gives you guys insight, and subscribe to my channel for more anime and otaku related content, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!